Man, I heard a nasty conversation about a item that I love being banned from cruise ships, and at least I know whether it's true or not. I'm going to share it with you. Plus, I've seen probably the most. Well, I've read about probably the most expensive cruise cabin I've ever heard of, and then there's just a hodgepodge of other things going on in cruising. It's going to be a packed show. Let's go. Hey, what's up, everybody? Welcome to La Lido Loca. Welcome to the cruise show. I am your host, Tony, here to talk you through everything going on in cruising, everything going on in cruising on a Monday the 16th of June, 2025. And let's kick it off with some new rules that are going into place in Mallorca. Mallorca, a very popular cruise destination. And well, they're tired of the shenanigans. They're tired of the tourism causing a problem for the locals. And so they've enacted some new ordinances. And while that's not surprising, I wanted to share some of the things they are against in Mallorca. Number one, public nudity. They're not cool with public nudity on the streets of Mallorca. Particularly, it sounds like female public nudity. There's a new law that you can be fined now if you're walking around topless in Mallorca or if you're not covered up enough. I don't really know who decides what covered up enough is, but now you can get in trouble for what you're wearing in Mallorca. Another thing that they're cracking down on, of course, is obscenity and noise, public loudness, that kind of thing. They're cracking down on that. They do a lot of scooter rentals there. That's a popular excursion for cruisers and people that are staying local. Scooter rental, electric scooter rental, very popular. But now if you want to rent a scooter there, you have to have your own liability insurance and you must be wearing a helmet while operating the scooter. I wonder if that'll come to the Bahamas. That's a pretty, have you ever seen those scooter things in Bahamas? They don't look very heavily regulated. And then the final thing is a term I'd never heard before, but it could be applied not only to hotels, but also to cruise ships, balconying. The word balcony with an ing on it. Balconying. That's not easy to say. Essentially, can you guess what it is? Essentially, it's when you go from where you jump from one balcony to another just to get to the other room. And sadly and tragically, there's a story, a cruise story from maybe 2 years ago where a teenager perished doing such a thing, balconying. And now they're cracking down on that in Mallorca. So you can get fined if you're found doing that. Of course, the ultimate penalty is if that doesn't go well. But yeah, so we got towns out there that are cracking down on what you do when you're in the town, which is certainly a big concern for all of us cruisers. And I guess not to be outdone, I don't think they were having a competition, but starting in July, we have that new cruise tax going into effect in Greece. Particularly in Santorini and Mykonos, they're going to be adding a probably 20 euro per person fee for all tourists. Now, fortunately, if you're cruising this year, they're not going to charge you when you get off the ship. They're not going to have a card reader out there where you have to pay your 20 euros. The cruise companies, they're going to pick that up. And you may be saying to yourself, well, who cares? 20 bucks, that's not a lot. Or 20 euros, I don't know what that is in dollars. 20 euros, that's not a lot. But think about this. They're expecting 1.5 million passengers going to Santorini and Mykonos this year off of cruise ships. That's just cruise passengers. And that's about 45 million euros in taxation that the cruise lines are now going to have to eat with their big open mouths. And, the beautiful thing about business, especially in a free market, is those costs seem to get absorbed and passed on to the consumer. So I don't know, the data is showing that because of this new, and I think there's a new tax for land-based tourism there also. It seems like it's working. If the goal is to have less people in Mykonos and Santorini, apparently it's working because there's less now. But how long will the less be good for the local, businesses? Will there be a time where they're like, oh, we've driven all of the business away. Yay. Could we do something to get the business back? That's life, right? It's ebb and flow of things. We come back to a equilibrium most of the time. I think that's a principle. And so maybe we're swinging all the over tourism movements across the world. um, I think they'll get what they want. They're going to get less tourism. And so you have the pendulum swing, way over here to less tourism. But then there, it could be a challenge for these local economies that really depend on tourism. And I would anticipate that eventually it'll swing back and they'll be more inviting. But maybe not, because what happens is, the business has to go on. The cruise industry has to march forward. And as I've said many times, when one door closes, the other door opens up. And so the next story I want to tell you about is a place where the door is opening up. We have word coming out of Lerwick, Scotland, that they have approved 3.2 million pounds to dredge so that cruise ships can come there. And so, all these places are saying we don't want cruise ships. Well, places that don't have cruise ships, they're paying attention and they're going, okay, well, maybe we can be a place where cruise ships can come. And Lerwick's doing that. And the wild thing is, I don't think they have any cruise contracts secured. It feels like they're just doing this as a way to entice new business, not only from cruise ships, but certainly other vessels, larger cargo vessels, those kind of things. But if you get your docking area, a place where larger ships, larger marine vessels can come in, you're opening the door to all kinds of new business. I think right now, the quay has been dredged to 12.5 meters. And then after this project, it will be going down to 14.5 and 16 meters for the approach into the harbor. So it doesn't sound like a lot, but apparently it's enough. It's enough to get larger cruise ships in. So yeah, places that are pushing cruising away, just know that there's other places that are trying to draw cruising in. It's a wild cycle. A wild cycle. And something else that's wild is a story about the MSC Magnifica. MSC Magnifica recently went into dry dock for refurbishment. And when we think about these dry dock stories, we think about, okay, you're going to get a new venue, or they're going to update the decor, or they're going to make some sort of enhancement to the stateroom. Well, MSC Magnifica went into dry dock and got less capacity. They got less passenger capacity. Now, I think they're going to get more bang for the buck with what they've done, but essentially they've traded out 80 standard staterooms and they've converted them to 63 larger suites. And so, I'm sure some whiz-bang has done the math. They used Excel or an abacus. They got a pen and paper, something like that. And they said, yeah, look, we're going to have less capacity because we're getting rid of these 80 staterooms, but we're going to have these 63 suites. And you know what you get with 63 suites? More money, more money. It's an interesting concept, because I feel like a lot of the debate that I see in cruising, particularly in cruising communities or in the comments here on these videos, there's a big debate that continues to rage whether larger cruise ships with more passenger capacity, with more amenities, is better than smaller cruise ships with less capacity and a different amenity set. And what I think at the end of the day is, I think there's enough passengers where both things can be true. And I also think there's enough vessels where both things that, can be true, where you can have big cruise ships with a lot of wild stuff going on. And you can also have smaller cruise ships with less capacity, more service focused, more port intensive, that kind of thing. I think both of those things can be true, but it is fun to have the debate. But this is an interesting story I've never really seen. Most of the time when you hear about these dry dock stories, it's about more cabin capacity coming. Very rarely can I think of something that ends up with less passenger capacity, but it's a bold move, and I'm excited to see what happens. Way to go, MSC. They're saying, look, I think we can do better with less capacity. But I guess while we're talking about suites, let me tell you about the most expensive cruise cabin I think I've ever heard on a per night basis. We're talking about a cruise cabin on the Seven Seas Prestige. This is from Regent Seven Seas. On that ship, they've just announced their new Skyview suite. This new Skyview suite is fancy. It's 2 levels, 9,000 square feet. It can have up to 6 people in it. So 6 people get a 9,000 square foot suite, multi-level. The whole top of the suite is the master bedroom, the master part of the suite. It's located on the deck above the bridge of this cruise ship. And it's gorgeous. The renderings, the pictures that I've seen, it's gorgeous. The finest finishes, all of that kind of thing. It comes stocked with high-end liquor. You get like Dom Perignon when you get on board. They also have some Remy Martin, Louis XIII cognac for you there. You get your own private gym. You get daily spa services. Your internet through Starlink is included. You have a dining room in the suite. You've got a butler. This is fancy. This is fancy, and I'm sure I'm missing some amenities, but you get a lot of stuff. But you also have to pay for it. And I was trying to figure this out. I was like, man, it would be great to go experience that suite, but how much would it cost? Even if you could just be one of 6 people. Well, the per night cost of the new suite on the Regent's Seven Seas Prestige, $25,000 per night. So 4 nights would be $100,000. So 8 nights would be $200,000. So for a 7-night cruise, $175,000. 17 divided by 6 is not. I guess you could do it for $30,000 each. So if you could find some other people with $30,000 for a week's cruise, that you, how if it was 6 strangers, I don't know how you'd sleep in that thing, anyways. But wow. This is the question for me. If you are somebody that can spend $175,000 for a week's worth of cruising, wouldn't you just like rent a yacht or something? That's a lot of coin. I mean, maybe it's a once in a lifetime trip, but or maybe I don't really understand what having a lot of money means, but that seems like a lot. That seems like a lot. Could you ever imagine paying $175,000 for a week of vacation? I'm sure there's some people out there, and bless you if that's you. Please go on this cruise and take some pictures and show. This thing looks like a whole just ship inside of itself. I mean, 9,000 square feet. That's huge. That's bigger than a house, right? Real quickly, I just want to throw this picture up there and say, I think last week Carnival celebrated 35 years at Port Canaveral. Port Canaveral, in my opinion, is one of the most important Florida cruise ports currently. You know, for a long time, it languished behind Port Miami as being an important cruise port. And maybe they're equally as important, but they get a lot of cruise passengers through Port Canaveral. And in large part, that's because of the efforts that Carnival has made there over the last 35 years. So I think, you know, if you like cruising out of Port Canaveral, you kind of got to tip the hat a little bit to Carnival, even if you're not inclined to do that. But yeah, happy birthday. You say it's your birthday. It's my birthday too, yeah. One of my sons had a birthday earlier in the week. So shout out to Andrew, and also shout out to Ludacris for providing that great birthday song. Now, before we get to the next story, I do just want to take a second to answer a question that I received through a comment. And the gist of the comment was like, wow, it seems like you talk a lot about negative stuff that's going on in cruising, and you don't talk a ton about positive stuff that's going on in cruising. And it's an interesting conversation. For me, cruising is great. Cruising is the favorite thing that I do in my life. I feel like if you are a cruiser, you know why cruising is great. And I really don't need to talk about why cruising is great. I do from time to time. I make very specific videos about why cruising is great. But when it comes to this show, when it comes to the cruise show, when it comes to the daily conversation, I think most of us are just interested in the outlying events, outliers, things that are out of the norm. And unfortunately, a lot of the things that are out of the norm are, you know, challenging. But not all. You know, people are like, oh, it's all you do is talk about negative stuff. Well, I don't think like a new ship cutting steel is negative. I don't think about the expansion of cruising to a new cruise port is negative. I don't think about a company celebrating an anniversary at, you know, being in a location or going to a new location, that kind of thing. So I think, you know, and I think most people get it. This is a commentary show. It's not even really a news show. You know, I'm not reporting the news. I'm not a journalist, for goodness sakes. I'm somebody who loves cruising, and I love to go out there and look at the stuff. So really, you don't have to, and then give you my opinion on it. And like, if you know, and I've said it before, if you dig what I'm throwing down, pick it up and enjoy it. But if you don't, and if that's what, you know, if you're just looking for, you know, a cruise tip or something like that, or only puppy dogs and rainbows, unfortunately, I don't think I'm the spot for it. I would love everybody to listen to me and, like I said, enjoy what I'm throwing down. But that's, you know, you can't be all things to all people. But I think it's a valid question. Wow, why are we talking about a lot of negative stuff? Cruising is so much better than the negative. That's certainly true. But I just assume that everybody who's interested in cruising already knows how great it is. And then if you're somebody that's trepidatious or apprehensive about cruising, then, maybe you shouldn't try it, right? Like, I've met people that are scared about a thing before they've even thought about a thing. And I certainly think cruising is one of those things that if you're scared about a thing before you try it, I wouldn't force anybody to try it. So I hope that helps some people out there. I want everybody to make the best viewing decision for themselves. And so let's level set it a little bit. I'm just over here curating what I think is interesting about cruising in the moment, in the day, and bringing it to you in the most entertaining way possible with my spin on it. And, again, most of it turns out to be outlier events, things outside the normal, because the normal when it comes to cruising is wonderful. And so I don't know. I don't know if that's for anybody, but it was a great comment and I wanted to address it. Now, there's a fervor, a hubbub going on over at Carnival, sorta. We have a very concerned customer that likes to snack. They like to snack while they're cruising, and they're concerned for, I would say, a multitude of reasons. This story was relayed by Carnival brand ambassador John Heald in a very entertaining 3-minute video today on his social media. He worked the whole bit during that video. If you want to see somebody committed to a comedy bit and work it for the whole 3-minute video, which is normally about a 5 to 7 minute video, go check out John Heald. Very well played, sir. I couldn't tell. At first I was like, is this really true? Because why would you bring it up? Like the bit that he was doing. But then toward the end, you could tell it was going to pay off. Here's the problem. Guest wrote into him and said, there are no bar snacks at your bars. And how come we can't have bar snacks? Because people like bar snacks when they go to bars, and you don't have the bar snacks. That was the beginning of it. And then they said the most incredible thing, which immediately made the hair stand up on my back. They said that they'd heard that snacks had been banned on Carnival Cruise Lines. And then particularly, they said that Hostess Ding Dongs had been banned. And if you've been tracking along with me for the last few weeks, I did a whole segment on Hostess Ding Dongs and whether or not they were better or worse now that they were no longer in aluminum foil. Of course, we know the answer to that. They were better in the aluminum foil. Anybody who disagrees, come at me. And so now we're hearing that possibly Carnival has banned Hostess Ding Dongs on their cruise ships. That they banned all snacks. And now poor people who like to have snacks while they drink are left in the lurch. Accusations flew. Accusations of nickel and diming. A ban on snacks so that they could sell you potato chips in their gift shop. And look, rest easy, friends. Rest easy. There has been no such ban on ding dongs. No such ban on ding dongs. No such ban on snacks. The general rule for most cruise lines are you can bring whatever snacks you want with you on board as long as it's in sealed packaging. It may not be true for every cruise line. It's certainly true for Carnival. You can't bring loose baked goods, stuff like that. You can't bring that on board. But certainly, if you get those, sealed in plastic ding dongs or Pringles can or whatever your Slim Jims, whatever you have out there that you like to snack on, you can get that on a Carnival cruise ship. So like I said, rest easy, friends. There has been no snack ban. And please go check out John Heald's social Facebook. It's on Facebook if you want to see the bit. At the end of the day, I love somebody that commits to the bit. And I don't know if anybody laughed at that bit other than him. And I smiled just because I appreciated him being committed to the bit. Let's just say he doesn't know what a ding dong is, and that's what somebody needs to bring it. You gotta look. I feel like you would appreciate the Hostess ding dong like the rest of us. So there you go. That's everything going on in cruising. Thank you so much for watching this episode. My name is Tony. Make sure you subscribe for more. Thanks everybody out there listening to this show. And now, there's nothing left to do but dance. Get up. Get up.